Ocean State Running here with John Menna, longtime Lincoln track and cross country coach. John, we have some news. You're retiring from the coaching after 31 years, I guess, at Lincoln High School. So, John, we'd like to talk to you about your coaching career and the highlights and everything else about that. But, John, first I want to ask you, why this year?
Well, with COVID came around, and have always I've been considering this being my last year for a while. And when COVID struck, I said, this may be the opportune time to retire and say my goodbyes. And so it came down to a pretty easy decision after everything was canceled this spring.
Yeah, so talk about that. So you wanted to finish, during the outdoor season, and then COVID comes around and kind of ends those plans. How
Right.
disappointing was that for you?
It was very disappointing because there were a couple of seniors that in the back of my mind, I said, when I lose these seniors, that might be it for me. And I always kept that in the back of my mind. And it was very disappointing not spending that last season with these two young gentlemen. But it is what it is, as they say.
So, John, like we said, you've been coaching there for 31 years. You also coached football at Lincoln High School for a few years. But back in 1989, when you first started, what was the reasoning behind it? Why did you decide to become a coach?
Well, that was a funny story. The legendary Art Collin, who was a throws coach back in the, I guess back in the 80s and 90s, he was a science teacher across from my classroom, and he would come in every single day, disrupt everything with his big, joyful Irish approach, and he would ask me if I wanted to coach, and I said, no. I don't know anything about track and field. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't be any good. And he said, don't think about that. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. And I did relent, and I took the job, and I fell in love with it. And like every coach, I tried my hardest to learn as much about the sport as I could. And as we know, track and field, there's an awful lot to learn. I never learned everything. There's still a lot of areas that I wish I had become more proficient. But, I attended the level 1 and level 2 and level 3 schools all over the country just to get up to snuff and to make sure that I was doing the kids that I coached some service. Again, I fell in love with it, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, and John, during that long tenure, I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes. I've seen a lot of changes covering this sport and also being a coach. How about you? What do you look at as some of the bigger changes that you've seen throughout your coaching career?
The sport is still basically the same. I remember we used to sit together as coaches and figure out the state meet and figure out the class meet, division meets, and just talk amongst each other. And computerized results, computerized entries, and all of that, of course, is new and makes things a lot easier. But those dual meets, those Saturday afternoon meets, they still take 4 hours, 5 hours, and it's still track and field, and that really has never changed. And the kids have never changed either. And again, I do have an absolute love for the sport.
Yeah, and it's a known fact that most coaches don't do this for the money. That it's basically for the passion of the sport and wanting to be dedicated to this great sport. And John, I definitely see it in you. I see you out on the track. You're one of the more vocal coaches that gets these kids pumped up when they're running these races. But what is it? Talk about that. Talk about being able to see these kids progress over the years and seeing their success. I mean, it doesn't matter from the JV to the varsity. It's one of those things.
I've been fortunate, working at Lincoln to have great kids over the years, and they've responded to the techniques that we have. Our coaching staff, they responded to all that. They've responded to my screaming and ranting and acting like a lunatic, and and they know my bark is not as bad as my bite, and they've responded to it, and they enjoy it. They enjoy the. I like to think the old school approach, learning from Howie Catley and Tom Carlson way back coaching football. You know, they were old school, and I learned a lot from them about coaching. Not necessarily the sport of football, but and football, I should say, but definitely technique wise. And I learned a lot from them, and I carry that, and always kept them in mind, and pretty much old school. So the kids would look at me a couple of times, and make sure they heard the right thing, and it's been fun, and they enjoy it, and they respond to it, and it's been an absolute pleasure to work with these kids over the years.
And let's talk about so your what would you consider one of the highlights of your tenure? Now, last year at the outdoor state meet, you guys tied for sixth, so a strong placement there. But what
Yeah.
would you consider some of the highlights throughout the years?
I have had some great distance runners, great sprinters. Hurdling, I love the sport, but I love hurdling even more. And I've really taken a lot of pride and joy with my hurdlers, and I had some all staters and all New England indoor anyway, all hurdling champions. And through the years, I like to think that our hurdling, has been up there amongst the best in the state. And there's just so many events, and Brian Grant, throws coach. I mean, I just have been in awe of what he has done over the last few years. I mean, he had five throwers, at the All American ranks, and it was just phenomenal how he brought recognition to Lincoln High School through the throws program. And of course, me being the head coach, just hung on to his coattails in a lot of respects, and it's been a tremendous boost to our program, the throwing program.
Certainly, I definitely agree with that. But John, another thing, so you've been around for a while, you've seen a lot of coaches come and go, a lot of great athletes. What are you going to miss most about the decades of coaching that you've done?
Uh, just the interactions, with the kids, just being there, and it's really the caliber of the boys and the girls that I work with. And, being a little biased, the track and field kids and cross country kids, they are the brightest kids amongst the brightest kids in the school. And it's been such an honor to work with these kids. They're going to be doctors and lawyers and engineers and astronauts and whatnot. Really, we've had kids work for NASA. And it's been such an honor to rub elbows with these kids, and hopefully they'll remember some of the due diligence that we as a coaching staff have instilled into these kids, and that is an honor as far as I'm concerned.
John, any words of wisdom you want to give to any coach, people that plan on becoming coaches? Do you have a replacement for Lincoln yet, or?
I don't know. The last time I spoke to our athletic director, uh, he had not found anyone. So I hope they would find someone soon. I know all of my boys are gathering as a team, and they're still meeting 3 and 4 times a week. And because I'm still on their group chat, and we still go back and forth, and they're meeting, and they're remembering how we spend our summers, and that is also making me very, very happy. I'm not in the picture anymore, but they are carrying on, and it's quite rewarding to see them doing it without really any adult in place. But Sue will be keeping an eye on them. Sue Carlson, she'll be keeping an eye on both the boys and the girls. So they will have some adult leadership, but in that respect, they are ready to go all over again. Yeah.
How about some words to give some of the coaches, some coaches that, or people that might want to become a coach? What do you think? What's some advice you'd give them?
Well, I think if you're, if you like the sport, you have to love the sport, first of all. I mean, because it's, I've always kidded parents who were in the stands saying sometimes watching a track meet is like watching paint dry. So you really have to love the sport. And if you love the sport, everything else falls into place. And I would just, uh, advise young coaches to give it a try. And sometimes you'll fall into the right position, the right school, and it's a good fit. And um, again, they fall in love with it, and they're there for quite a while. I mean, the coaches in Rhode Island, I mean, as well as I do, they have been there for quite a few years. I mean, it's been 30 years for me, and I still see a lot of the same faces, still coaching and still loving it and still being as enthusiastic and as they can possibly be. So, give it a try, and hopefully you'll fall in love with it. If you don't love it, get out of it.
Yeah, you're certainly right about coaches having long tenures here in Rhode Island. We have, I think, probably half of them at least 20 years or more.
At least,
John,
sure.
any regrets?
Oh, none whatsoever. Yeah, my whole life, I always say that I have absolutely no regrets, in retiring. I'm happy right now. I'm well rested, and the time has come for me to retire, and I have absolutely no regrets. I mean, throughout the years, yeah, you always look back at, you had some hurdles. Oh, if I only had known this at that time, but life goes on. Life goes on, and absolutely no regrets.
But John, you retired as a special ed teacher back in 2012. Now as a coach, and you're heading off to sunny Arizona. So why Arizona? But enjoy your time there.
Absolutely. Why? I cycle a lot, and it's probably the cycling capital of the country. Beautiful roads, beautiful mountains. Well, right now it's on fire, but beautiful sunrises, sunsets, and my wife Angela, uh, she loves the outdoors and the mountains, and it's just an absolutely gorgeous place. And we're both really looking forward to getting there. And we're leaving this weekend, so packing up our goods and heading to Tucson.
Well, John, I want to wish you a lot of luck in your retirement,
Thank
and
you.
certainly enjoy it. You definitely deserve it from all the dedicated
Thank you.
time that you put into coaching as well as teaching. But again, enjoy your time there, and thanks a lot for talking with us today.
Yeah. And Steve, thank you for all the years of your service for track and field. We really have appreciated the work that you've done for us. You've always stayed with us, and you've always given the kids the recognition that they deserve. And I thank you.
John, I appreciate that. But thanks again.
Okay. Ciao.